Welcome, everyone. This is the Friends of Curry Campus speaker series. We do these once a month, the second Thursday at 1 o'clock. And we've been focusing lately on the natural world. So I'm going to real quickly go over what's coming up because I feel like I've been saying this every week because I have been. So August, next month, nothing. September, we're going to be having someone from the Audubon Society talking about birds. It's going to be like backyard birds, not, more of the backyard focus on this time. October, we're going to have a kind of an update talk on the monarch butterflies and the new technology. November, I'm going to be talking about the Australian rainforest. And in December, we're going to have a Christmas music program. So that's kind of the lineup for now. And then first off, I just wanted to put a shout out to Jill, our dean, for setting us up in this great new space.
I did want to say we have a comment card back there. We have a little box. So if you feel so moved, because we'd like to share this with our Coos Bay campus, you can leave us a comment, hopefully positive, but please leave whatever your heart tells you to write.
Okay, and also if you haven't signed in already, there's sign-up sheets there for, that way we can keep track, know how many people are attending these, and also you would then be on our email list so you'll get a notification each month and know what's coming up. So Karen is going to talk real quick about a new marine biology program here at the college. So
what are we going to do? Bill Gorham is our current specialist here on marine biology, and who's in the next generation? Well, there's a new marine biology program at the Curry campus. At Southwestern Oregon Community College. It's designed to give students a direct path to completing their full bachelor's degree without leaving the coast. So they can complete 2 years. Oh, you can't hear. Okay, thank you. A student can complete 2 years at the community college, and then they transfer to Oregon University's Institute of Marine Biology, located in Charleston, which is up near Coos Bay. So if you're an aunt and an uncle or a neighbor and you know a student that's really interested in this, this is an opportunity to tell them they can start. In fact, if they're taking dual credit in high school, they can complete some of their first 2 years in their own high school here in Brookings or Gold Beach, wherever they live. The cost of this, I just want to let you know, because some of you might want to help those nieces and nephews and grandchildren and so on. It's important to know the cost. If you just want to give to the scholarship fund is another way you can help a student train for marine biology. So the annual tuition is $9,000. $9,000. Scholarships are normally in the $1,500 range, but you can imagine $1,500 can really give a boost to a student. So just wanted to give you that. If you are interested, you can talk to me. I'm a member of the foundation at the college, and there is an ability to give to a scholarship fund. I also was given by one of the staff some of the curriculum. So I have a couple of pages that I can show you. You can share with this prospective student. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, real quick. This is round number 3 of a 4-part series that Bill's been doing on marine biology, invertebrates, and today is sponges, sea stars, sea cucumbers, sea urchins, and their relatives. And last week, if you were here, we heard about giant swimming sea spiders, which made all of you just want to jump in the water and snorkel or dive, or maybe not. So today will be a more weird stuff. And so take it away, Dr. Bill.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And as Vicki noted, I made a last-minute change, and it does say sponges here next week, but we put it under there so we had enough time for all the things next week. So now, as those of you that have heard it already, if you came before, you know that we're talking about invertebrates in the sea, But what's interesting is that if you look at the number of animals that are not invertebrates, in other words, vertebrates, that's about 3.5% of the known species of animals. I may say known species because there are a lot more we know about the vertebrates than the invertebrates. And so when we think about what's in the ocean, we're looking at things, well, these are terrestrial, and that's about a little over half of the known species. And if we look at the main marine species, marine groups, mollusks the first week, crustaceans the second week, the corals will be next week. We're only looking at about 8% of the known species, which means we're left with 38% that are in the other groups. We'll touch on some of those, but it also means that of all the marine invertebrates together, it's just a little less than half. But that doesn't really tell the picture because roughly 3 to 5% of the animals that live in the ocean we know about. So many we know little about, and as they do more work with remote vehicles and other ways of finding these new areas, we're learning a lot more about what's there. So we're going to talk about echinoderms and sponges today. And what I wanted to talk about is the major groups of the echinoderms, echino being spiny, those are the sea stars and urchins and such, and their common characteristics, so you have an idea what unites those. Talk about common characteristics of sponges, and they are incredibly simple. How they feed, how they reproduce, how they survive in extreme environments. We'll look at the very, very deep sea and the intertidal out here, because if you think you're trying to make a living in the intertidal, when the tide's up, you're hit by waves, it's cold seawater. When the tide's down, you're hit by sun, by rain, by snow. That's very, very tough. So you have a sense that they're doing a lot of interesting stuff to stay alive. Major groups, we basically going with 5. We have the sea stars. Their group is called the asteroid stars. That makes it easy. We have the ophiuroids, the brittle stars. Ophio is snake, so you can kind of see their little snake-like arms as compared to the sea stars. We have the sea urchins, echinoidea, and the echinoderms, again, spiky. That's a pretty straightforward one. And then there's the holothroids. I wasn't able to find a good Greek connection to that, and so I just think they're basically hollow tubes. So the holothroids, they're just bags of stuff, and we'll talk about that. And then the feather stars and the sea lilies. Now they are the crinoids, and crino being flower, and so they kind of look like that. All right, defining characteristics. What do they, most of them have? They have a 5-part radial symmetry. And if you look at them, a sea star is pretty straightforward. The ophiuroids are kind of that way. It's kind of hard to see with the sea urchins, but we'll show you that in fact they do have that symmetry. We also have, what's interesting is that 5-part radial symmetry, they start out as bilaterally symmetrical larvae. And just like the butterflies come from caterpillars that change radically, so do these guys. So they start out bilaterally symmetrical at up, down, left, right, front, back. And then as they go through the larval stages, they eventually come to the point where they lose that bilateral symmetry. By the time you get to there, you're 5-part radial symmetry. And so it's really easy to see that in the starfish. Other defining characteristics, they have a water vascular system with tube feet. And what that means is that they take seawater in through this opening, the madreporite. It's got a little sieve plate on the top of it, so stuff it doesn't want to go into the system doesn't go in. It then has a ring canal to move it around to the different places. It has radial canals to take it out to the arms. They've got ampullae, sort of think about a turkey baster. They have a big bulb and it pushes water out. And you have the tube feet, which is the suckers that are down there. And if this is kind of a close-up look of the radial canal coming out, a lateral canal to the ampulla, hence the thing about the turkey baster, the sucker at the end, and it varies between the different types of echinoderms as to what kind of tube feet they have. All right. The other thing they have are these bones and ligaments and muscles. They are really weird. That's way different from what we've got, clearly. And you can see some of these look like sort of medieval fighting tools. And it's very interesting because that allows for the muscles, the ligaments, and everything to give a lot of flexibility. Some of you may be of a vintage, as I am, that the night that Richard Nixon resigned, it's like, what has that got to do with marine biology? I was doing a 24-hour study on how far individual sea stars would move. So what I did is I took some fishing line, threw a needle, put it through the arm, put a tag on it, and every 3 hours I'd go back and see what's there. 2 a.m., I went out and I found one had put its arm through and taken a tag out because it was able, I didn't see anything, no problem with it falling apart, but that's because it was able to move it through these things and went off on its own. So I lost all those sea stars. Not really. And so the nice thing about it is the sea stars are able to move where they want to. Here, these guys are scrunched into the sand, and they're able to get into small places. Not so much for the urchins. These guys are called an urchin test, because with those ossicles, the bones, it can be very solid. It's very fragile too. Here's a little one, and here's a fossilized one. That one's pretty tough. Now the sea cucumbers are interesting. When they've got the muscles all tight, they can be fairly rigid and everything. When they relax, they can relax really well. The other thing is these guys have a very high capacity for regeneration. This one lost one arm. This one lost 4 arms. The point is that if it holds enough of that central area, the central disc, it can regenerate the rest. I was diving in Monterey one day, and a sea otter came up, and he had a starfish. Bit off an arm, shoot it, bit off another arm, shoot it, bit off another arm, ate 4 arms, and threw it back in. And knowing it's going to regenerate it, so that's pretty good sustainability for those sea otters. So you can see in here, this one has lost about half of it. In fact, the brittle stars, many of them, will actively separate out. So they're actually increasing their numbers by dividing and then regenerating the other half. So we have one that's looking back here. Here are 3 little nubbins. Over time, you'll end up with 2 identical brittle stars. The other thing, may seem odd, usually have a complete gut with a mouth and an anus. So starfish, the anus is at the top, mouth on the bottom. The urchins, same thing. The holothroids, well, they're long tubes, so the mouth is at one end, the anus is at the other. For the brittle stars, they don't have an anus. Anything goes into their mouth, if they can't consume it, has to go back out through their mouth, which constrains kind of how they eat. Some of the sea stars, these guys live in the sand, and they also have no anus. And so you'll see that Mother Nature is pretty adaptable as to how it does feeding. Feeding modes of these guys, you see that sunflower sea star is a voracious predator. Here is a small dried one. And those guys are out here, and we'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute. Crown of thorns starfish is on the Great Barrier Reef. It destroys much of the Great Barrier Reef. The feather stars are filter feeders up in the water. They'll pick stuff out in the water. The orange-footed sea cucumber normally is buried into the rocks and has these tentacles out into the water. We'll see a shot of that in a bit. Then we have detritivores. This is a California sea cucumber that uses its tentacles in its mouth and just pushes it around and cleans up what it can on the bottom. And then we have, in this case, the bat star, which are scavengers, and they'll go eat whatever they can, and especially animal material. Okay, so we're looking about sea stars. You can see they come in a wide diversity of styles and sizes and such. General anatomy, we're going to start to see some redundancies here. We see the madreporoid, which opens into the water vascular system. We have the radial canal and ring canal. And here we have what's called an ambulacral canal. Ambulate, it's where its tube feet come out. And these are exposed. We'll see that in a little bit how that can be exploited by other animals. So we have the stomach, anus, and digestive gland. The stomach's kind of interesting because what it does, it's able to push it out through the stomach, out through its mouth, and digest its food outside. In this case, this little guy, the muscle, has been captured by the tube feet of the starfish, and it pulls it apart. Doesn't have to pull it very far apart. It just needs to have it enough to put its stomach inside, secreting digestive juices, and then it's having a milkshake for dinner, which probably isn't really pleasant for the mussel. In addition, they have spines and they have gills and things on their surface. And the spines are effective at keeping things away. You saw a quick picture of the crown of thorns starfish, big spines. The gills are what they use for getting the oxygen in and such. Some of them have nothing there, others have a lot there. What's not shown here are a thing called pedicellaria. Pedicellaria are little biting things. That is an example of a pedicellaria. They can be little, that will just maybe keep stuff from sitting on the surface, or they can be very big. And they're very big and very nasty. So depending on the animal and what they're using it for, it makes a big difference. Very effective. So we have, in reproduction, they typically are broadcast spawners. They have external fertilization, which is that you want to have some way of making sure that when the eggs are out there, the sperm come along at the right time. So there's interesting coordination for the release of the gametes. They also have a central nervous system, a nerve ring, and radial nerves going out. They don't coordinate really very well. The sea stars seem to do better than the brittle stars. In fact, at the end of most of the tips of some of the starfish, they have a specialized tube foot that has receptive or photoreceptors there, so they can tell whether it's light or dark, which is good if during the day they're trying to hide, they go to some place that's dark so that they have a place to be protected. Okay, local sea stars. We have this guy, the blood star. That's an omnivore. It basically cruises around and tries to eat the sort of stuff it wants, and it mainly feeds on sponges, but when it can't find the sponges that it wants, it'll then just put some mucus on its back, let that catch some of the bacteria and stuff, and then it'll eat that. That's one way to live. Leather star, that's a carnivorous omnivore. It goes and favors animal tissues, but then again, it's not real picky. It'll take things like anemones, cucumbers, urchins, sponges. So what's there, it will eat. Then we have the bat star, the omnivorous scavenger. It'll eat whatever it can, and that was a picture of the animals that were on that dead sea lion. Now these guys are the most common sea star that you'll find out here, the ochre star, and they are strong carnivores. They will eat pretty much whatever they want, and that includes the mussels, barnacles, limpets, anything else that's out there. And they are very effective. If you walk on the beach and you see something like this, it's probably, almost certainly it's dead. It's bleached out a little bit. Maybe something your dog likes to roll on or eat. Suggest not doing that. This one is pretty rare. If you were here last week, that was the lobster that was half one color and half the other at 1 in 50 million times. I don't know what the suggestion is, how common that is, but I've only seen it once. All right, a little bit of the ecology. These guys, the ochre star, are a keystone species. What does that mean? Well, keystone species means it really affects the whole ecology of that area. If you see, here is the ochre star, the ochre star, and up there are the mussels and some barnacles and things. Down here, because that's up higher, this is down lower, and here you have lettuce or the kind of algae and stuff. These guys, because they have that water-vascular system, because they can't stand being out of the water too much, they can only go so high. They would love to get up higher and eat all those things. They can't do it. These things down here, the mussels and the snails and such would love to be down there. But they know if they're down there, they're going to be food. And so this is an interesting situation that was identified by a guy, Bob Payne, in 1960. So there was an area that had a whole bunch of tide pools. Some of the tide pools, he took the ochre stars, and as it said, he tossed them out. So he was a tossing biologist. Others of the tide pools he left alone. And he kept doing that month after month and for a couple of years, and found that over time, those tide pools that no longer had the sea stars in them had mussels and snails and other things down there. The ones that didn't have them removed, they still stayed like this, that maintained. So that's what they mean by a keystone species, because that's critical of maintaining what the whole community is like. Now our favorite, sunflower sea star.
The sunflower star is a
This is sped up.
predator. It's more than 3 feet wide, is replete with 15,000 tube feet, and is one of the fastest animals in its biome.
That's how big they get.
This cockle is trying desperately to escape its many-armed doom. The sunflower sea star is capable of moving up to 200 feet an hour, more than enough to overcome the cockle. It has the ability to sense the waterborne chemical residue of dead animals, making it an efficient scavenger. And when other predators, such as this crab, target the sea star, it can detach an arm and make a getaway. It will later regrow the arm, and a whole new sea star can even grow from the lost arm if it retained a large portion of the central body.
The sea stars are amazing predators, and the animals that they like to eat know it. There was a story about an abalone farm down north of San Francisco that had bunches of tanks, a little abalone growing up, and a sea star got caught in the impeller to the intake, and it ground up the sea star, and all the little abalones went up and said they'd rather desiccate than stay in there and get eaten. And so that's not a trivial thing. They were well aware of their nasty predator. Now, one of the problems that's happened very recently in the last decade or so, a little bit more than that, was a sea star wasting disease. And it's caused by, among other things, a type of bacterium that's related to what the same genus that it causes the flesh-eating bacteria in humans. And so the same sort of thing is happening with this. You can see that they just sort of fall apart. And here's a picture of our sunflower sea star. It's like just a bunch of goo there. But these guys are very important predators, keystone predators in the kelp bed.
As a veterinarian at Monterey Bay Aquarium, I care about sea star wasting syndrome because sea stars are integral members of our ecosystems and help maintain healthy kelp forests. So wasting syndrome is a melting syndrome that affects a lot of different sea stars. They can initially start presenting with really mild signs, some arms twisting, abnormal positioning, but it can really quickly progress into dissolving into goo and dying. When this first really started popping up on the West Coast back in 2013 and 2014, the estimates since then have been over 5 billion with a B sea stars have died, and a lot of these were the sunflower sea star and sea stars like the ochre star. Wasting syndrome affects over 20 different species of sea stars. By losing those top predators, we lost these robust kelp forests and all of the animals that rely on those habitats. So one of the well-known effects was with the loss of the sunflower star, which helps keep urchin populations in check in the kelp forest. By losing this predator, all of those urchin populations started growing out of control and shifted the diverse, robust ecosystems of the kelp forest. A recent paper has been published that did find one of the causes of wasting syndrome in sunflower sea stars. They identified a bacteria, a species of Vibrio, that is a causative agent for wasting syndrome for sunflower stars. At Monterey Bay Aquarium, we've been utilizing a protocol that we modified from the Oregon Coast Aquarium to actually treat and rehabilitate sea stars showing signs of wasting syndrome. We have successfully rehabilitated dozens of stars. The ocean is such a source of wonder, and caring for it is the biggest joy in my life.
So you can see with the loss of the sunflower sea stars, it had ripple effects that were huge. Here's a paper or a flyer from NOAA that talks about the effects. Having lost the sea stars, the urchins went crazy. The urchins eat the kelp. And the kelp are annual, and so they will fall off at the end of the year, and the young ones will start to grow back. But if the urchins are down there eating it, then there's nothing there to grow back, which means there's no kelp for the fish to get into or for the other animals there. Also no food for the urchins. So it has a big cascading effect. The suggestion is that maybe with the warmer water, that Vibrio was more common. Who knows what was the reason for it? And not just here, this is the Great Barrier Reef. They are very strong predators, the crown of thorns on coral. So the infestations increased by 50%. And that's on top of the bleaching that's happening. So it can happen in different places, and that can also have an effect. And here's a couple of pictures of the same species of crown of thorns, and they're very imposing. But if you were there for our first one, you saw a big a sea snail that was eating one of these guys. So they do have their own predators.
Starfish. This is a juvenile starfish, and then this is actually getting towards being an adult, although these can actually, this is probably about 40-50 centimeters across, they can actually get up to a meter across.
About like this.
So a starfish, and they can actually, their actual stomach is and mouth is underneath here, and they can eat an area of coral that's up to a dinner plate size in each day. So
remember, they put their stomach out and consume it.
They're amazing predators of coral. And that's why they're a problem when they get to very large numbers. When there's individuals, it's okay. When there's large numbers, it's a real problem. And that's why we have a dedicated control program in the Great Barrier Reef. So we see cycles of crown of thorn starfish outbreaks in the Great Barrier Reef. They seem to take place their course runs about over about a 15-year period as they spread through the reef. They're incredibly well adapted to eating coral and actually also to making, spreading themselves through actually producing lots and lots of eggs and sperm and large baby crown of thorn starfish. But when an adult like this could actually potentially produce hundreds of millions of eggs, and so that's why it's really important to keep the adult numbers in check to make sure that we can reduce the impact of these outbreaks. That's particularly important as we see more and more pressures from climate change, because this is something that we can directly tackle and successfully support coral habitats, which are crucial to the Great Barrier Reef's health.
All right, so let's look at some other in this case, deep sea stars. These guys are interesting. They kind of look like a cross between a brittle star and a sea star in that they have a small central disk and somewhere between 6, what happened to the 5-part symmetry? 6 to 20 of arms. Now, they're interesting because they have little pinnules that come off the side, and from that they have the pedicelaria that reach, basically, they're able to reach out and grab stuff that comes by in the current. You'll see little sea urchins down there as well. Now, next week, we're going to talk about some of the soft corals, and that's what you see this thing growing on. Now, this sea star specializes at eating soft corals, and it's got the tube feet and it's got pedicelaria that allow it to crawl up these soft corals and eat, and it'll stay there for as long as it takes to eat the entire flower coral. And with that, the good thing from it, from an ecological standpoint, it'll provide some hard substrate that other things can then colonize. So there is a balance there, but they're very well adapted for what they're doing. Shifting over to brittle stars, you can see we got quite a lot of variety there. They all kind of look like they got fuzzy arms and everything. They really get weird when you get down to these guys, the basket stars. Now to look a little bit about their anatomy, we start off and we can see they have the jaw that will help them grind up their food. They have a mouth, they have teeth, and they have their stomach. Remember, the stomach, what goes into the stomach has to go back out through the mouth. And these guys don't have an reversible mouth, so they can't go spread it out. We'll see that's of importance in just a bit. They have tube feet, characteristic of the echinoderms, and these guys are more pointy than the flat stuckers of the sea stars. You can see, again, we have the different bones, and when you see how these guys move around, it almost looks like spines moving around, or snakes. They have, if you took the top off, they have these things called bursa, and there are bursa slits to allow water to come in. It uses that for breathing a little bit, also for getting rid of wastes, and sometimes it'll use it for reproduction, for having the eggs in there, and some of them will brood the eggs there. You can see here the bursal slits that allows access to that. Here's a good video.
Brittle stars are echinoderms that are closely related to starfish. They typically have 5 very flexible arms that they use for locomotion. They can move quite rapidly by wriggling their arms. The arms are typically covered in delicate spines. Their spines may be so dense that they give their arms a fuzzy appearance. Brittle stars can voluntarily detach their arms if attacked by a predator. The missing arms can regenerate. The majority of species are bottom dwellers. Brittle stars may hide under rocks, in crevices, or in other organisms like coral and sponges. They may also bury themselves in sediment. They are common in tide pools and reef flats. Feeding tactics vary by species. Some feed by extending their arms to snatch nutritious particles out of the water column. Their tube feet help gather the food particles and transfer them to their mouth. Some are scavengers, and some are predators that prey on small animals like crustaceans and mollusks. Brittle stars are sensitive to light and will typically scurry for cover when exposed. Research on some species has shown that their body is covered with tiny transparent calcite crystals that act to focus light onto their light-sensitive tissues underneath. This forms an array that functions as a single eye. They have chromatophores that can be used to change color by expanding and contracting. They usually become lighter in color at night. The nerve endings in their skin can sense chemicals in the water and touch.
The rule of thumb is that they have a nerve ring in the middle. They have the 5 rings going out, nerves going out to each arm. But the suggestion is it's like 6 different parts. So if you cut an arm off, it'll go off and do brittle starish things. And so it's amazing that the 6 components are managing to coordinate very well, especially when you see how some of them are able to move around so effectively. Now here's an example of the one she had talked about. They have light-sensitive skin, And so it's able to tell whether it's light or dark, and it's actually get a sense more than just light or dark, a little bit more of a particular focus on that. Another one is interesting. This guy is, we said most of them sort of move their arms around like they're swimming, or they crawling along like that. These guys are up on their tippy toes of those little tube feet. And so they more glide. So they're cute there. It's interesting because it has a specific type of worm that lives with it commensally. It seems that I'm not sure, haven't seen how it is a benefit of the two together, but you can see how beautifully colored it is, so that it is a perfect match. And this is where the benefit of having an aversible stomach is really nice. This little guy's got a scallop or some sort of bivalve, and it's got to get in there, get its mouth in there. You can see the helper of the fish trying to eat some of that. So it's probably going to pick other ways of getting its food.
As I say, you can see a brittle star.
But these guys are really good at swimming.
Went towards something. These are usually method crawlers.
Is that sped up or is that normal speed?
That's normal. That's what it's. So.
Uses one of the arms as a rudder, and the other four as propulsion. He's doing the breaststroke. That is really interesting.
Yes, that's a marine biology nerd. So the excitement. Yeah.
Is that where sand dollars come from? Those guys?
No, sand dollars we'll talk about in a minute. All right, the strangest of all of these guys, the brittle stars, are the basket stars. They took dividing their arms to a new level. You can see they can have 5 sort of start from the central disk, but they divide and divide and divide. And I suspect this is sped up a bit, but you can see it can be a yard across, 3-4 feet big, huge. They're found in the deep sea. You can see incredible amount of branching. You can see where I've seen pictures of them just all lined up on sort of higher parts of the rocks, so that they're able to all feed with whatever comes by in the current. You can see how that's a whole series of them there, down to a little deeper than a mile. And that's one of the reasons why we want to protect seamounts, because they offer special habitat for a lot of critters that are trying to get away from just the plain flat muds and such. Now that's the speed that they usually move in. Oh wait, it stopped. Okay, we started with the sea stars, and they said, well, let's see it go to make it urchin. So we kind of blow it up, pull the arms in. All right. So we have a variety here. Here's abandoned sea star, which is interesting. It's got 2 different types of spines. One is fairly long. The little ones are secondary, and they're farther in. These guys have toxins in those spines. And so if you happen to bump into them, you'll take the bad end of that encounter. Here's a hard urchin. And hard urchin is all right, there's got to be an exception to every rule. This one has a front and a back. It's sort of oblong, and it lives in the sand or mud. It produces a mucus-lined burrow, and it picks up pieces of mud and other stuff that's in the mud, and it feeds on that. Here is the slate pencil urchin, and it took the spines to a very different level from that one. And so it's, again, just shows the variety of morphologies. And now this one went the opposite direction. The diadema, that has spines that are very long, very brittle, very sharp, and hurt like anything. The worst thing about them, they break off very easily, and you don't expect to be that close to them, but when you're in the water and you're moving around, you do encounter them. And the solutions to getting rid of it, we're not going to discuss here. It's a little bit crude, but it's effective. Now, taking a look at what the insides are like, we're going to see that common sorts of things we've seen with others. Of course, we have the spines and the tube feet. Yes, they do have tube feet sticking out in a lot of different places. They have pedicelaria. We'll talk a bunch about those guys in just a second. They have a mouth down at the bottom, anus is going to be up at the top. They also have this thing there, an Aristotle's lantern. It's unique to these guys. They have the gonads up at the upper part, also you call it row. They have the gut sort of circulating around in there, the madreporite that controls what goes into their water vascular system. They have the ampullae that control from the inside to control the tube feet. Now, looking at that Aristotle's lantern, it's a marvel of engineering, and it's 5 parts. It's got a lot of muscles and a lot of connective tissue in there. It's got 5 teeth on the very bottom, so it's very effective at grinding away at anything, especially the little kelps. You can see on the inside, it takes a substantial amount of that inside of that animal, so it's pretty considerable part there. And looking at it with less in the way, it's, again, fairly complex. Now here's a green sea urchin, which is similar to the ones we have out here. If you were to cut away part of it, you could see here, there, 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 and there, 5 of the rows where the tube feet come out. So it does have that 5-part radial symmetry. In between, so we had those, the ambulacral areas, those are interambulacral areas. Say that because they got this wrong. They pointed this to the it's not right. So we won't test you on that. But you can see, if you were to shave it, you can see where the tube feet come out, primary and secondary spines and such. Now, we talked about the roe. The roe, or it's called uni, that is really tasty. I was doing a dive class down in Southern California, and towards the end, a couple of the teaching assistants went out and collected some of the big dark red urchins. Came back, opened them up, took a bunch of the roe out, mixed it with cream cheese, fresh bread, and it was spectacular. There was nothing that was better, nothing fresher that I'm going to share with. So here, $2, 2 ounces, $60. So the interesting thing is that there are people here, there are foragers, and I was talking with Lori, and she said that out here, you used to be able to pick up the urchins and get the uni, and it was very good. Because we no longer have the normal conditions, the roe is terrible. There is nothing there because the urchins are starving, and so they don't have any energy to put into the eggs. This is the guy, the genus and species of the one that's out there. They produce these urchin barons. You can see there's just some sad little kelps that are trying to get through there. This doesn't have anything there. So when you see something like that, you can see things are way out of kilter. Now, it's not just here. This is Australia. They have this particular one, Trypnustes. Remember that one for a second. That one produces urchin barons too. Same sort of thing down there. Now, is that a flower or an urchin? Who says that's the flower? Who says that's the flower? Bottom's the flower. Okay, that's pretty good. But it's pretty good because I was drying our dogs and I looked down and I said, that looks like something that's real familiar. Oh yeah, it looks like that urchin. Now, remember I said about the pedicelaria? That's what these cups are. And those cups are really, really nasty because they will bite very hard and inject poison. And so the first one I had said, remember that one? It does it. It's another species of Trypnustes. This one does it. It looks so pretty. and yet it is really nasty. And this one, another species of Trypnustes, the collector urchin, that takes it to another level because its little parts at the end will break off. And so it'll actually kind of shoot it out, and it'll bite you, and it'll continue to bite you, and it'll continue to inject venom. And so that's one to stay away from. Not a very good one, not very friendly. But for last week, if you were here, we were talking about the decorator crabs. Saw this guy. This is smart. The decorator crab's smart because not only does it have the spines, but it also has nasty venomous pedicularia. So it's getting some real good protections for what's there. Sand dollars. We got to it. So sand dollars are just sort of flat urchins. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-part symmetry. That's where the tube feet come out. You have, this is where it has the spines on it. This is where the spines have fallen away. It's dead. That's what they look like when they're out there in the water. They're up on edge, and they're taking water, stuff in the water, take it out, and they will then be able to move it over around to the mouth. They do have these club-shaped spines. They have food canals, and they will use their tube feet to move it along on over to their mouth. This is an interesting guy. They do also have an Aristotle's lantern. And so if you were to break it apart, you could see that Aristotle's lantern. If you broke it a little bit more, you could find how the Aristotle's lantern fell apart into 5 pieces. People call those the doves of peace because they do look like little doves. Now you can see in this case, the mouth is here, the anus is at the end, and you can see the different food groups. So that's what's interesting. They are just an urchin, but a really interesting one in a unique area. All right, we had our starfish. We managed to make it a sea urchin. If we turn it on its side and squeeze it out, and there we got our holothroids. We got our sea cucumbers. So you can see they come in a huge variety of forms, but mainly on that same thing of a long, skinny tube. Some of them are really weird. We'll look at some of those. But it's a common theme. Some look more like snakes. Some look more pigs, but we'll see that in a minute. To give you an idea of their anatomy, they tend to have the tentacles at one end. This is a schematic. Again, the tentacles that are there. This would probably be that it'd be embedded in rocks and stick this out for feeding. We have the animals that are going to be walking around. On one side, the tentacles are not going to be very common, if at all, the tube feet. Others on the bottom side, we're going to use that for moving around. So we then have the reproductive system inside. Now remember, this is basically a bag. And that bag has everything inside. The gonads are inside. That's not surprising. Stomach's inside. Yeah, intestines. Okay. Longitudinal muscle bands and everything. These are the parts for the feeding the tube feet. And we have a respiratory tree. Its respiratory tree is inside. It gets its water in there by putting it through the cloaca by way of the anus. So it opens up the anus, it expands the cloaca, closes the anus, contracts the cloaca, and it pushes water up into the respiratory tree. Heck of a way of breathing, but it works because then when it exhales, squeezes it all out. Seems to work. Here's an example of what happened a couple of years ago when, after a heavy-duty storm, we found hundreds of these little cucumberia, the orange sea cucumbers, all around the beach. It's like, what was happening there? What was unusual? Couldn't figure it out. It was distressing to us, probably more to them as well. This is one that was off to the side. You can see the bands. You can see the bands that are on the tentacles, then the tentacles out. If you could actually see it from the tentacles itself, you can see they're very finely branched and really good at picking stuff out of the water. And if you wonder how you get from the tentacles, these guys just stick their hand in their mouth and pull it out.
Oh my.
Fairly straightforward. And there goes the next one. So much for watching somebody eat. Now you can see these guys, they use the tentacles down there, and they just go across the bottom and pick up whatever they can find. You can see what happens after they've processed their meal. And in fact, if you're diving around a sandy area and you see piles like this, you have a pretty good idea who's been there. Examples of some of the animals that are around here: a white sea cucumber. It's got a lot of little frilly parts there. This is a warty sea cucumber, well named. That was a California sea cucumber that we saw before. They're all just basically feeding off stuff on the bottom. And then there's this one. Somebody had the creativity of calling it a gummy squirrel. Best I can tell, they thought it looks kind of like a gummy bear, and it looked like a squirrel with a tail at the end. It's like, marine biologists got to be very creative when you sit there doing that again and again and again. Anyway. Sea pig. It's got its little legs walking around, and this is one of the most common ones down there. And of course, there's its friend, the brittle star. And there are its tentacles out there picking up stuff off the ground. So they're only about 6 inches long. So they're interesting animals.
Oh, that's what you seem feeding over.
Marine biology nerd.
Which are modified tube feet, scoop in the sediment, and they are only taking in material from the surface of the sediment, which is higher in organic material.
Said that today, but they do spend a large portion of their life up in the water column, whether that is to get somewhere much faster, or putting in his poop.
Nerd.
Just before he lift it off. And that's something that the holothurians are known to do. They drop as much weight as they can just before they lift off.
The nickname headless chicken.
Get somewhere quickly, or more likely trying to evade.
Kind of looks like a headless chicken to me.
The name Enypniastes means dreamer. So dreamer is certainly an apt name for the way that sea cucumbers swim.
So as far away from what you were thinking about a sea cucumber as you could get. Now, this is obviously sped up, but it gives you an idea that they can move around a lot. They could look like inchworms. In the meantime, they're pulling stuff up off the bottom. And now, an unusual thing about, remember how they respired?
This fish found an unexpected hiding place inside a sea cucumber's rear end. Pearlfish is a small, slender fish, and in a world where everything wants to eat it, it has to find a hiding spot. On the other hand, sea cucumber is a cylindrical marine creature. It sucks in sand at one end, extracts anything edible, passes the waste out the other, and breathes by taking in water through its anus. Once the sea cucumber opens for a breath, the pearlfish swims into the back door.
It backs
Although
in.
Some might say this is disgusting. Sea cucumbers are repulsive to most predators, providing the perfect shelter, so the pearlfish is safe inside, and it'll stay there until it's time to feed again. The relationship may be commensal, in which no harm is done to the host, but in some species, the pearlfish can function as a parasite, causing harm to its host by eating its gonads and other internal organs.
Quite a surprise for a house guest. Okay, sea cucumbers do have a defense, and there are these tubules. These guys were bothering it, and so it pushes those tubules out. They're tubules of Cuvier, and they're interesting. When they get out, they expand substantially, and within 10 seconds of being exposed to seawater, they become very, very sticky. So if you're a fish trying to do something with it, you get wrapped up in those, then you're not going to be able to eat the sea cucumber. The other thing is they do have toxins in it. And as I mentioned, a lot of the sea cucumbers do have toxins, so they are not a favorite prey of a lot of animals. Now, crinoids. Crinoids are something that's been around for a long time, an excellent fossil record. There are two main kinds, sea lilies and feather stars. And the big difference is these guys have a stalk. They have a crown for both of them. They have, in this case, the stalk. They have arms. They have pinnules off the arms, little legs, if you will. There's a hold fast these guys to hold them to the ground, and kind of compares to these cirri that are there. I think of them as chicken feet. And so these guys are interesting. They make their living by filtering stuff out of the water. They have been around for hundreds of millions of years. You can see that if you look at the central disc, the mouth is in the middle, the anus is here, you have the different arms and then different branches from that, the pinnules. From that, we have the mouth and anus and then the ambulacral groove. Remember, that's where we saw the tube feet coming out. So they have that to grab stuff that's floating by in the water column and move it down to their mouth using those tube feet. The ossicle are the bones that are holding it all together. You can see it can be a lot of branching to it, very effective. Now a sea lily is interesting. It looks like it really ought to be blowing hard like a fan that direction. In fact, because it's got those ossicles, it's able to hold that position and actually have the water come the other direction. It's in this way, can hold it out there, it's like a basket, so it's way more effective. Now the feather stars, I think, are gorgeous. They're really interesting. Lots of colors, a lot of patterns. I'm amazed the pictures that it's easy to get a lot of videos of them being out. I always find them hiding in the reefs. So it's cool to watch what's on YouTube. If only it was for one diving. And so the different colors and patterns. I love the feet that are holding on. And the different arrangements. And remember the sea spiders swimming around? These are very effective swimmers. And they do look fairly fluid, really sort of better than, yeah?
They go that fast?
Yes. Yeah, they're effective at moving around for long distances. Some of them are better than others. Some get tired and then fall down or where they are the new place to be. And some of them say swimming is not for them and they'll just crawl around a lot slower than swimming, but it's another option. The interesting thing about these guys, they have commensals. They have species that live on them and have good relationships. If you look close, in a second, we'll be able to see a shrimp that is very, very well camouflaged, very adapted, clearly, to live on that particular animal. There's a little fish that comes around. A finless fish, specifically adapted to live on that crinoid. So those guys are really well adapted. So those are the echinoderms. Now, what I wanted to do was, so that we had plenty of time to talk about all the other things on next Thursday, I wanted to talk about sponges. Now, you're probably familiar with this sponges. You've probably taken baths with sponges like that. You may not have, not all guys will admit they've taken baths with those. So your experience is probably more like this. Or if you've got grandkids, it's probably more like this. So sponges are amazing. They're really interesting animals. If you walk around the shore here, you might find these things. They're fairly common. They're finger sponges, kind of soft. I don't think I'd want to shave or wash with that. A little while ago, somebody was asking, what was this on Facebook? And it looks like chewed up bubble gum. I believe it's a sponge. And I'll talk a little bit as to why I think it's probably that's what it is, but there's also a question about that. That is what a natural sponge looks like when it's out in the ocean. So clearly, you have to know what you're looking for and then treat it a lot to then wash with it. They come in huge sizes. That's big. See the scuba diver behind it? The guy could fit in that. There are different colors and patterns and things. They can be encrusting. It can look like somebody spilled some paint. They can have big holes, sometimes little holes. And so you can have a huge diversity of sponges. Sponges are actually really, really cool, especially if you can go diving and see them in their natural position. They're very simple animals. They're basically just a central cavity with water at the top that goes in from the sides. We have the osculum, the exit pore. we have the central cavity where the water comes in after it's been pulled in. The sponge wall is very simple. It has these collar cells, and the collar cells basically are a cell that has a ring of flagellum at there, a ring of finger-like things that are there that water gets pushed through by the flagellum. It's like a little whip, pulls water through that collar cell, and anything that's in the water gets caught by the collar cell. The interesting thing, it can take things that are small algae cells, phytoplankton, all the way down to viruses. Not very good at viruses, but still are really effective filterers. They then get anything that gets caught gets moved by the amoeboid cell, basically an amoeba that goes around to the collar cells and picks it up and then distributes it out to the rest of the sponge. It has the pores that allow the water to come in from outside after the flagella cause the water columns the water to move. It has spicules. Spicules are little pieces that, like we've seen with the other ones, that hold it all together. And we have epidermal cells, which are sort of the glue to all of that. Spicules can be very simple or incredibly complex, and that's what they use to tell the different sponges apart. And it's like sponges are incredibly simple, but then you can see that they're also incredibly complex in their own way. Now, to give you an idea, here's the pores, the ostia that comes in, and there's the oscula where the water gets pushed out. You can have a simple kind of sponge that's basically like it showed in the first diagram. You have something that is more complex where you have sort of the pores coming into a central cavity before then going out to the main one. You can have it go beyond that where there are a lot of channels and everything moving around. And when you get to something like that, it gives you something like this, and you go, I don't see how that's a sponge. And that's the complexity you have there.
Sponges are very effective filter feeders since they're able to capture and eat particles as small as bacteria as well as larger particles. They might not look like they're doing much, but a simple demonstration shows how effectively sponges can pump water. On a reef in the Caribbean, I make a dive with a syringe filled with a non-toxic dye called fluorescein. By squirting it around the base of some sponges, we can observe how the water is moving by watching what the dye does. Within only seconds, the dye is pumped through the sponges along with the water. As you can see, a sponge is a pretty good water pump and also a good strainer. Any plankton that goes in with the water won't come back out through the osculum.
I'm amazed at how fast that happens. You get a sense that those little collar cells, lots and lots and lots of them, are very effective at moving water along. Okay, again, sort of the variety. This again looks like somebody spilled paint. You can see the different oscula that are there. You have this, which looks like the chewed bubble gum, which is like, oh man, I guess that's a sponge. It has a nudibranch that is specific to it. It's the same color as the sponge, and it's smart because when it lays its eggs, it's the same color as the sponge too. So it's interesting the associations that happen among the different animals. Some things are a lot well removed evolutionarily. Here's an interesting one, a sulfur boring sponge, and there are people who would say that's redundant, a boring sponge. However, they are ones that are, they can dissolve calcium carbonates and other things. Here's an example of a rock scallop shell. If you look at the edge of it, and there's an abalone shell over here, you can see it as well. The sponges will land on that and then burrow in to the shell. And it's actually a good thing because it'll do anything that's calcium carbonate, like reefs, and help break it down. So you have a way of continuing to recycle things in these environments. And here's the example of this is the one I just showed you. You can see all those holes in the abalone shell. And they have, again, a variety of animals that will live with them. That's a little fish that seems to consistently be in those kinds. The shapes and the colors and all is just amazing. It's very easy to fall in love with sponges if you have a chance to go diving. This is deep enough, we really can't go see it because it's many thousands of feet down. But a glass sponge, it's something that would love to have in a display case. Corn dog. Hard to figure out who named that one. So they do have predators. In fact, hawksbill turtles love sponges, and they're a main predator on sponges, and it's one of the main foods they have. And so you can see this guy's chomped down quite a lot. There are also angelfish that like sponges. And as I pointed out early on, a bunch of the sea stars like to eat sponges. So things that are probably going to eat if they can.
Scientists from the California Academy of Sciences, the University of Victoria, the Koyukon Marine Laboratory, and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently described an extraordinary new species of carnivorous sponge.
Carnivorous sponge.
Or the harp sponge. Rather than filtering water for food, as most sponges do, carnivorous sponges ensnare tiny holes with Velcro-like hooks and spines. The sponges then envelop and digest their prey. These sponges were observed on the deep sea floor off the coast of California. They live on soft, muddy sediment at depths of 3,300 to 3,500 meters, where environmental conditions, including food sources, are extremely stable. The harp sponge anchors itself into the soft sediment with a root-like structure called a rhizoid. We named this unique animal harp sponge because the shape of the vein and the vertically aligned branches resembles a harp. Like sea fan corals, we think the harp sponge evolved into this shape to maximize the surface area that is exposed to prevailing currents. This increased surface area probably helps the sponge capture prey and release its eggs and sperm into passing ocean currents. The upright branches of each vein typically end in a swollen ball, which is where packets of sperm are produced and released. When sperm packets released from other nearby sponges are captured on egg development sites of the vertical branches, the area becomes swollen as the fertilized eggs mature.
So now we told you how simple the sponges are until you get something that is completely out of character for those. So it's just a sense of if you can dream of it, Mother Nature's probably tried it. So what I wanted to do is kind of end there, talk about the echinoderms. We mentioned the 5-part symmetry, the water vascular system, which means that's why they're exclusively marine, the loosely connected bones and muscles, and their high regenerative capacity. Specifically with sea stars, they tend to be top predators. They can be very important, and they have a very diverse feeding strategy. The brittle stars, again, a diversity of body types and feeding strategies, especially the basket stars, which take it to a new level. We have the sea lilies and feather stars. They're stalked or free-living, they're flower-like, and they're an ancient group. Then the urchins, the spines and the pedicelaria, their gills, the Aristotle's lantern. You have uni or roe, sand dollars with the doves of peace. And then we have sea cucumbers, the hollow tube with gills inside, lots of diverse body forms, and they eviscerate for defense. Then the sponge is the simplest of all animals, but a lot of diverse body forms. Most filter feed from seawater, but as we saw, not all. So, I'm done. Do you have questions? Yeah.
Like 3 questions.
That's fine.
First of all, the central disc of the starfish,
Mm-hmm.
what exactly about it allows it to regenerate its leg?
That's a really good question. It's able to differentiate the tissues that have been removed, and so it's it's kind of like how we can have scabs form and everything, but we cannot regenerate tissues. We don't have the ability for the cells to sort of go back in their developmental stage, so they're able to. So it's something like that.
And then sometimes when I'm walking on the beach, I'll find sea stars, and if I know they're alive, I pick them up and throw them back in the ocean.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm not sure if they're alive or not. I Googled it once, and they said if you turn it over and you rub the underside where their little feet are, and if they move, then they're still alive.
That's a good rule of thumb. So, yeah, chances are if they're washed up, they weren't able to hold on tight enough, so they may not be in great shape. On the other hand, it might have been, like I saw, you showed the picture of the sea cucumbers that came up in mass. It's like, something got them loose. Yeah, exactly.
One more question.
Yep.
So, I've found tiny little sand dollars, like smaller than a dime.
Yeah.
Can you explain the reproductive process of the sand dollars a little more? Because obviously I've never seen any pregnant sand dollars.
Yeah. They tend to have external fertilization, so they will release the sperm and release the eggs. And that's why if you're going to do that as a reproductive strategy, you better do what you can to make sure that when the eggs are out there, the sperm are going to come at the same time. Usually it's a matter of, and I forget which is precedent, probably the eggs being out there because there are fewer of those and they are have a lot more energy in them. And so then when the male would recognize that the female is out, or the eggs are out there, then that would be spawning and releasing the sperm. And so beyond that, once you have the development in the water column, then they will be the zooplankton, and eventually when they get to the right stage, they will settle down and become regular sand dollars. Other questions? Yeah.
Can you review the function of Aristotle's lantern?
Yeah, it's an incredible structure because it's got to control those 5 teeth, and they're going to be, and again, a 5-part symmetry is odd, and it's got to be able to push them out a ways to scrape, and then grind and all, and then let the food come up through. And when you've got 5-part symmetry, it seems to be a good balance between the forces to get the food up and grind it up. That's the best I can do. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, so the Vibrio that occurred in 2013 that caused the wasting disease in sea stars, what's your theory or traditional theories or about why that happened then? Because Vibrio is something that's usually found in the ocean anyway. So what was it, the population of the sea stars was high enough to cause there to be the transmission, or is it...
Well, the question about the cause of the Vibrio epidemic, if you will, that caused the sea star wasting disease, there's not a good answer for that. What was the bottom line cause for it? The suggestion, it was probably warmer waters than has been in the past, and that might have accentuated it. It could have been that the conditions were right for that particular species of Vibrio to attack things. The fact that it wasn't specific to one species, but it was to a lot of the sea stars, it wasn't to the other echinoderms, that's a good question. Those are the sorts of questions that are being heavily researched right now.
Population come back for the local sea stars?
No, it's being, for 2 things. One is there are a few populations that survived the wasting disease, few parts of the sunflower star, but they are few and far between. The Monterey Bay Aquarium, and there's actually a sunflower lab that is doing most of the work to find out what was the cause and how can they breed groups that will be resistive to the disease. So it's an intense thing because the consequences are huge. I mean, it goes beyond just some of the fish. In Port Orford, there is a group of gray whales that don't go all the way up at the end of the year up to the Arctic to feed. They stay in Port Orford. They feed. It's their adaptation around there is they have to be having a good kelp bed around there. When the kelp bed is gone, the grave whales can't get the food that they need. So it's not just the fish, but in special conditions like we have right here, it's affecting a bunch of different animals. Yeah?
When the sea stars and brittle stars are pursuing macroscopic prey, how are they sensing their prey and what is it they're sensing?
As I said, at a number of them, they have chemosensory abilities. They talked about the sunflower sea star that can smell when there are different probably hormones or just the sense of the animals that they're feeding. And like I said, the abalone on the opposite side there, they could smell that there was a sunflower sea star that got ground up, and so its essence said, we're out of here. And so chemical cues are very big in the ocean. So, yeah.
I keep asking. I have one more question.
Yeah.
So the sea cucumbers, I've always been fascinated by their ability to eviscerate. So once they grab that fish, do they take it back in? It's sticky. Can they get rid of it, or can they eat that fish, or what happens?
So the fish that is a symbiote that goes in its anus and lives?
No, I was talking about the ones when you excite some sea cucumbers, they eviscerate.
Correct.
They stick out their tentacles.
Yeah.
And then that's a way to attack whatever's attacking them. Do they actually, is that a way that they ever used to?
From my understanding, what they do that as a defense. They put out the organs of cuvee and they entangle the attacker, and then while the attacker is dealing with that, they take off, because they typically eat stuff that's either filtered out of the water or they pick up from the bottom. So they're not predators like that. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for staying.
What you got on the table there, Bill?
We have a variety of echinoderms and some sponges down there.
You want to point any of them out specifically?
These are the kinds of things you can see on the beach right now. And we're going to be talking about those. And here's another sponge. It's kind of interesting in that it looks like chewed up bubble gum.
Okay, let me get a close-up of that. Sweet. Okay.
So this is the sort of thing you probably wouldn't want to bathe with. It's got, but you'll see there's a lot of adjustments you got to make to use a natural sponge. Then we have starfish of different kinds, just to take a look at it. And then the sea urchin test is what it's called, with a shell.
Show it to me.
There you go. And that's the bottom side where the mouth is.
Some of the starfish.
This is the most common one they have out here, the ochre star. It's kind of lost its color.
That's what we used to pick up in San Diego.
Probably.
Looked like.
Oh, I don't care.
And then here's a fossilized urchin.
I am told that you are drawing the largest audiences these guys get up here, generally speaking. How do you think that translates?
I think it means that people are starved for good things to do. It's kind of like slow news days.
I think you're right. And folks, listen to the man. This is a good thing to do.